Okay, total immersion. Total immersion in noir. Total immersion in imagery. The imagery of cinema, of the sound, light, all those sensations surrounding you. And that's not enough, also in poetry. I'm in that kind of mood today, that total immersion frame of mind. You know what I'm talking about? Happily, I have the poem for that. I have the movies for that, for total immersion. Now, the two movies, I want everybody to think about this, and I'm asking you seriously. You take the last of the films noir of the classic period, and some people even say this is beyond the classic period. They don't accept that a movie made in 1958 could be classic noir. And you know, others of the noir aficionados, that's a French word, I think, aficionado. I'm saying it in English, not French. Some of them say, yeah, that is film noir, but the very last one that was made before it became neo-noir. Some people already know where I'm going with this. That movie is going to be Touch of Evil. Big fan here of Touch of Evil, right? It's got everything, total immersion. And the poem that I'm going to read is going to draw that movie together, connected to, find the connection between Touch of Evil and the first slasher movie in history, for better or worse. You know where I'm going with this? Have you figured out what I'm talking about? 1960. I was young. Psycho. So now this is what I want you to think about. What is it that connects these two movies? Two great directors, that's true. Two geniuses. Two of the directors who influenced movies from then to Kingdom Come, right? We're still experiencing the influence of what they brought to cinema. So one was Hitchcock, it was Orson Welles, Touch of Evil, but that's not the connection. What else? Are you thinking? I'm waiting for, somebody out there knows. The one commonality between the two of them, Janet Leigh. You hear what I'm telling you? Janet Leigh ends up in great peril, lives to tell the story, but goes through a very bad experience in Touch of Evil, is subjected to great outrages. And then in Psycho, she dies a terrible death and spawns the slasher series. Touch of Evil, kind of the end of an era. And what was interesting about that movie is that by then, 1958, film directors, certainly Orson Welles, was very aware that he was making a film noir. Unlike the earlier film noir directors and producers and writers, they didn't know they were making film noir. They weren't aware of that until the French explained it to them. So maybe some of those earlier movies had elements of noir, the snappy dialogue or the high contrast, dramatic, stark lighting, or the quality of hopelessness or cynicism about the human condition. And they had crime, of course. But because now Orson Welles knew he was making a film noir, he put everything in it. Crime, oh my God, does it have crime, and it has mood, and it has the gorgeous expressionistic lighting. Oh, lighting, you could get drunk on this lighting. I mean, you could turn off the sound and just for the imagery alone, the angles, the odd, askew angles that make you disoriented, and the just strange faces as they appear on the screen. It's a very sleazy movie. It's a high quality. It's sleaze raised to the level of high art. Or maybe it's high art dragged down to the level of sleaze. But I don't care. Whatever it is, it's absolutely delectable. So one critic said it was I think he said it was the greatest piece of cinematic trash ever put on the screen. And it's every cover of every 25-cent pulp novel you've ever seen. It has, just give you a little rundown in case you haven't seen it, don't remember it. So a good, honest, brave detective with integrity is in this little border town between Mexico and the United States, and there's a crime that takes place there. It concerns him and has something to do with him, with his particular concerns, because it's on the border of the U.S. and Mexico. So he gets involved in the exploration of the crime, and he finds himself in a partnership with a very corrupt, bad cop, a criminal cop, and he is played by a large Orson Welles, an Orson Welles who even put on more weight to play this role. And he has a lovely wife played by Janet Leigh. Her name is Susie with a Z. At some point, Janet Leigh winds up at the Otay Mesa Hotel, if I want to say that properly, and I think now I would like to say it properly. Not Mesa, Mesa. Mesa. That's how the people who speak Spanish say it. I think they know. So she winds up in that hotel, trapped in there all alone with, as my mother would have said, one time I was 6 years old in San Francisco. I looked at there was a man, he had a black leather jacket. He looked very strange in this black leather jacket, and he had a motorcycle. And I remember saying, "Mommy, who's that?" And she said, "Oh, that's a juvenile delinquent." So that I saw my first juvenile delinquent in San Francisco, age 6, right? So she was trapped in the hotel, Otay Mesa Hotel, with a bunch of hardcore juvenile delinquents. And they subjected her to something which the camera does not show us, but it's bad news. Then Janet Leigh, after undergoing this and surviving, 2 years later, right, where does she wind up? In Psycho. Now she's in the dawn of the slasher movies. So happily, there is a poet who pulled these two films together in one poem. And her name is Marsha de la O. Marsha de la O. Now there is a name to conjure with. And she recently had a book come out, and it won the Isabella Gardner Poetry Award, Anecdote for Night. That's not the one I'm going to read from, though. That's not the one that has her poem, her immortal poem, Janet Leigh is Afraid of Jazz. So this poem, which I love so much, finds an interesting, utterly original, smart, and complex way to examine danger. But unlike the kind of flat image that is used again and again, a kind of maybe a stereotype, it's a figure that is returned to and used again and again of the woman who is stalked and somebody comes to save her. In this situation, the danger comes from all directions. It is both inside her and outside of her. It exists in the real world. It exists in the fictional story that is being told, and it is also in her psyche. It is as if something is driving her to it. Everything in this poem is complicit. All the elements of the movie-making process, all the accoutrements of it, all the technology of it, the lighting, the cameras, the script, which are referenced, the apertures of the cameras, they are complicit, they are culpable, they are telling the story, they are also forcing the story to happen. Some of my favorite contemporary poetry engages the senses on every single level, as this poem does. Things you can hear, things you can see, things you can touch. These two movies, The Touch of Evil and Psycho, do the same thing. We remember that shower scene. That scene completely immerses us in every kind of sensation. Clever of Hitchcock that the knife never touches her skin. It doesn't need to. Hitchcock didn't need to show the knife going into the flesh. That was tawdry. Nowadays, people are tawdry. But we heard that sound, that zing, 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 zing. It's terrifying, right? And also this chunky sound, and that was of a melon. He had all the different melons brought in. Every melon in existence, kasabis, watermelons, and people punched each melon with a knife. And at the end, they said, which melon makes the most terrifying flesh-like sound? So what you're hearing is a knife going into a melon, and that little zing, 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 zing. So it surrounds you with all the impressions of the senses. And so does this poem. The voices that swim through the music, offering something forbidden close up, the dark arms of the horn player, his skin fitting him sleek as a shark's suit, clasping the sax, lifting it as it sound descends in long sizzling lines like wires arcing out, empty eyes sliding up and back to the halo of the spot, motes drifting. It makes her want to run, like it could tear her apart, a man at each limb, lifting her off the bed at the Otay Mesa Motel, all of them dressed in black, and the music never letting up its dazzling, spun-out phrases. If she could run, she would, under the shadowy arcade as the camera pans wide, but she's hobbled by her tight skirt, the staccato of high heels tapping a rhythm on the uneven street, her breasts heaving under cashmere, dog collar of pearls around her perfect neck, while the sea crashes in the near distance. We know she's doomed by music. Cloudburst of percussion on the windshield, then silence. The camera wheels around, and Bates Motel appears, lit up on the sign. It's the way every aperture turns into another eye, and the shower won't stop running until long after she's died. We know she's doomed, chords shifting darkly, but she persists, carrying on with her share of sorrow, changing into black lingerie and skipping town if she has to, ending finally there, wherever the heart of trouble happens to be. This poem she dedicated to Eddie Muller. Eddie Muller heard the poem and loved it. Eddie Muller is the Tsar of Noir. Who said he's the Tsar of Noir? I think it was James Ellroy called him that. He created and produced, started the Noir City film series up in San Francisco and one at the Egyptian Theater here in LA and in other parts of the country. Women poets are doing more interesting things, I think, with the classic film noirs than some of the feminist critics. Some of them are doing interesting things, but as Eddie pointed out, Eddie Muller, Tsar of Noir, said the feminist critics have said for some time that the femme fatale in those movies expressed men's fear of women, of powerful women after World War II, working women. He pointed out that actually the femme fatales are the ones who don't have a steady job. Interesting point. Femme fatales are the ones who are the gold diggers, who are hanging out in the gambling places, leaning on the blackjack table. They're the people who marry for money, like Barbara Stanwyck in Double Indemnity, and the ones who are working as journalists, as girl reporters or something, or have a steady job, they're the good ones. So I've just been thinking how the poets are the ones who are taking these iconic images or stereotypes and rethinking them, using them as sounding boards or starting places to reinterpret them with a consciousness of our age, as Marsha de la O does. So, good night, ladies. Good night, gentlemen. And remember, look both ways, watch your back, and never let anybody treat you like you are two for a cent.